ko Rodger toko ingoa, no te wairarapa oku tipuna. Kei te noho o ki whakatū, kei te whakamarumaru ahau e mahai ana. He National Controller taku tūranga mahi, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hey, thank you very much, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to join you for today's workshop, and my compliments to the Tairāwhiti Civil Defence Emergency Management Group for the initiative. I think it's a tremendous idea, and putting yourselves out there to lead this. So well done to Ben Green and the team, and also fantastic to see such a tremendous turnout there in the audience. So it sounds like it's been a really productive day, and I was introduced as the National Controller and Manager of National Operations. I've been with NEMA now for coming up to about 2 years. My job within the NEMA structure is to make sure that our operational readiness and response structures, facilities and personnel are ready to go and a match fit so that NEMA can acquit its obligations under the CDM Act, and as part of that we have a role to help steward the system. Before that, I had a career at the regional level, doing the job roughly that Ben is doing in Tairāwhiti. I was doing it in Nelson, Tasman, and worked in that region for a number of years before that. Had a career with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So that's just a little bit about me. My background includes operational responses to a number of declared emergencies, and most recently in terms of tsunami events, the 5 March event from last year, during which I was the acting director for NEMA, and that was quite a thing, and I know a lot of you were involved in that as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit this afternoon about National Controller considerations at my level in terms of the scenario that you're looking at. And I've got not too many slides. There's a few words on them, so I'm sorry about that. It's late in the afternoon for lots of words, but I'll talk it through. And perhaps what I'll aim to do is get through the slides, about half a dozen, and I'm hoping there'll be a bit of time for Q&A at the end before you have to get on to your next activity. So I'm just going to share my screen, and let's just make sure that this works okay. All right, so I just wanted to talk through, and some of this you'll have covered in your earlier sessions, but just to recap. Okay, so this earthquake, the scenario that you're looking at is a very severe one. It would cause obviously severe shaking onshore in many parts of New Zealand. So for this, we really are relying on our community to focus in on our public, the best parts of our public education campaign for tsunami, which is long or strong, get gone. Natural warnings may be the only warning. So public education remains the key for this, and you'll know that NEMA has a national program, but we need this to be constantly reinforced at the local and regional level as well, and in every community. So the time required for the usual national warning process for what we call our pre-computed maps at the national level involves NEMA, but also GNS, is at least 20 minutes to get a warning out for a pre-computed map. If it's a bespoke event that we're responding to, it's more like 40 plus minutes for doing event-specific forecasting. So, you know, obviously that those timeframes exceed the wave arrival times for hikurangi type events. So we have what's called an interim process for the hikurangi events, and this was born out of the Kaikoura earthquake, and that involves us at a national level issuing an emergency mobile alert before a national warning is done. So this generates an EMA, emergency mobile alert, within 3 to 5 minutes. And if the Wellington or MAR Centre, the MAR Centre is our monitoring, alerting and reporting centre, if they are inoperable, then our failover is to the FENZ Northcom Northern Communications Base in Auckland. If we have to fail over to Auckland, it'll add at least another 10 minutes, probably more, to the process. Let's talk a little bit more about that urgent alert that would go out. So, because the process for getting this out is a little bit different to what normally happens in terms of national warning followed by EMA. It's reversed at the end. So, if we get an earthquake that is in this sort of scenario, we get advised of the parameters from GNS Science by their 24/7 monitoring centre. That comes to NEMA at our 24/7 centre. The 24/7 centre called MAR, the Monitoring, Alerting, Reporting Centre, they will plot the coordinates for the scenario. It will fall into one of the pre-computed boxes, and you can see there on that slide, box number 3, or map number 3, I should call it, which is the dotted lines. That would be where it would fall for this event, and triggering our process. In this process, an event is opened in the Whisper platform, as we call it, and we send a national advisory called Earthquake Being Assessed, and that's sent automatically. And then an emergency mobile alert is sent to the areas in the map that correspond to this threshold. So if it's an 8+ Hikurangi event, it's going to be inside this map 3, and we send an emergency mobile alert as quick as we can to those areas shown in black on that map 3. And they are told that earthquake has occurred, and that if they feel that in those long, strong, get gone parameters, they should evacuate immediately. The other areas marked on that map 3 there, which are in the hash, are still being assessed. So the important thing to understand with this rapid process, and it's shown in the blue boxes there, the last 2 blue boxes on the right are reversed as to what we would normally do. So we would normally get the national warning out followed by the EMA, but in this process, this rapid process, we get the EMA out first and then start follow up from there. All right, roll on to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the activation of the National Crisis Management Centre for this kind of scenario. So just a reminder that NEMA is the lead for tsunami events at a national level, regardless of the size. And as I said before, this scenario would cause severe impacts across multiple regions, including in Wellington. Due to the level of support and coordination required, we'd be standing up the NCMC, which is the bunker under the beehive, at what we call Mode 4, or Manage. And that's full leadership, operational leadership at the national level from the NCMC. So the full activation of that facility would take, we think, about 48 hours, but there would be a response starting from, right from the beginning. The NCMC would be fully staffed, be fully activated, but the challenge would be that Wellington could be severely impacted, and depending on what exactly has happened, we may need to fail over to the alternate NCMC, which is based at the Ellerslie Event Centre in Auckland. And so the surge staff would be required to meet the staffing needs of the NCMC, and we'd need liaison in the facility, whether it was in Wellington or in Auckland. So the conclusion that we've reached from this sort of scenario and what it would mean for Tairāwhiti is that you could expect that our level would be severely impacted and disrupted, and it would slow down our ability to respond to and support what you're doing at the regional level. So let's just also cover off national state of emergency considerations. Our expectation for this kind of scenario is that a national state of emergency would be declared within the first 24 hours. And the Minister would do that at the national level based on advice from the controller, myself, or alternate controller if I'm not able to respond myself. The sorts of things that national declaration would be used for would be emergency works, evacuations, building assessments, restriction of entry, and that kind of thing. Initially, the declaration would be for 7 days, but the presumption is it would be rolled on as long as it was required. And just as a reminder there, the Christchurch earthquake from February 2011 was in place actually for 66 days. And that was although a large event, it was a more regionally confined event. A national declaration supersedes any local declarations, so it's possible we might have a scenario for Hikurangi, the Hikurangi event whereby Tairāwhiti or Hawke's Bay or Bay of Plenty may actually declare locally, but once the national declaration happens, it supersedes, and then if regional controllers or group controllers require things at their level to be put in place, that's requested through the NCMC, authorised under the national declaration, and then it's applied at the regional level. So an example might be if you needed to compulsorily evacuate somebody or a group of people from an area, or if you wanted to exclude people from an area that had been very badly damaged and for their safety you wanted to keep them out, then that could be something you'd request through the NCMC under the national declaration. And of course, a transition period at the end of the declaration would be very likely for the recovery, and would be, we expect to be, quite an extensive thing. Information and requests from CDM groups. A priority for us would be establishing comms and situational awareness, and making sure that we had started getting a bit of a flow going with the group regional ECCs around, so we could establish what is happening and start the flow of information both ways. The sorts of things that we would want to know at a national level probably mirror the kinds of things that you would want to know, say from Gisborne, if you're wanting to know what's happened in your outlying communities, and that's information around fatalities and casualties, damage, critical infrastructure damage, property damage, the extent of the inundation, the impact on populations, including our communities and maraes in remote areas. We'd also be wanting to know what is the impact on the response capability, such as responding agencies. In terms of requests through from regional sectors, such as Tairāwhiti or your neighbours, the sorts of things I think we'd be dealing with would be, that you'd be wanting from us, would be intelligence and aerial surveillance, LiDAR, specialist capabilities, such as New Zealand Defence Force, and surge and additional response staff. Welfare support, USAR, medical assistance teams, and our EMAT teams as well. So any information or resource requests that you have for us at the national level, we'd ask that they come through the NCMC, and the operations team receives those, and then we farm them out. And just a reminder, some of you will know this, but not everybody, but the preferred way of expressing these sorts of requests is to describe the thing that you want to achieve, or the effect that you want to achieve, rather than the equipment. Because we, at a national level, only have so many, Hercules or P3 Orions from Defence Force. We only have so many USAR teams, but there will be the opportunity, as we'll discuss in a moment, to look internationally for some of this. But we also need to allocate those resources across multiple regions. And it may be that some of the solutions to what's being asked for could be in the private sector as well. So when we're allocating those resources, what are the considerations for us? We'll be obviously using a priority basis. For those of you who know SIMS, you'll be familiar with the response objectives, which lay out the hierarchy through from, protecting life at the top end, and tracking through protecting property, protecting animals, looking after the environment, and so on and so forth. So those will be key reference points for us. The NCMC, we need those requests to come in to us where they can be assessed and looked at coherently, and not just taken care of or allocated at regional levels, especially when it gets into critical items such as helicopters or I recall from Christchurch earthquakes, things like portaloos and chain link fencing become quite critical in a strange sort of way. And just a reminder about those defence assets, I've already mentioned them. We will be expecting NZDF liaison at the NCMC, so that's where we'll be making those decisions around how to put those assets into the field, whether they are Army, Navy or Air Force. Just also to flag that at the strategic or national level, things do widen out to with a political lens and what we call the ODESC arrangements, and this is the multi-agency chief executive level discussion around making sure that the high end of New Zealand strategic, political and operational requirements are being factored in. And that takes us on to the important consideration of international assistance, which becomes a very much a national issue. So we'll have activated what we call the international sub-function in the NCMC, and that's part of our operations team. And we have pre-approval from Cabinet to make requests for or receive or accept offers of assistance from a select group of countries. And so we can do that straight away. If we're getting offers from others, we do need to go back through the ODESC system, which we can do very quickly. But it's not a straight yes to certain countries. We do need to be selective in certain cases. CDM groups can request capabilities or assistance, but we want to manage any requests for international assistance and the allocation of those resources at a national level through the NCMC. So, you might have a sister city relationship with somewhere in Australia or the United States, but we don't want those bilateral links being used to rope in teams of people without reference back to the NCMC. So the sorts of capabilities that we expect would be typically asked for would be USAR, medical assistance teams, humanitarian support through the Red Cross and the UN structures, police, DVI, disaster victim identification, and military aid as well.